I'm reminded of Woody Allen saying, you know, I'm not afraid to die, I just don't want to be there when it happens. You know? Now I know, and as I get older, I know I definitely am going to die, and I don't know when that's going to be. But what being with people who are dying has taught me is that it doesn't have to be excruciating. Well, I see people who are in maybe a little agitated at times or restless, but for the most part are quite peaceful. Sometimes sad, but usually with other people and being cared for beautifully. And that was not the way I thought it was going to be.
Noyana, 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 Nitini.
So Noyana is a South African word that means we're going there. And it's not specified where that place is or if it's even a place. It's just a sense that there's a journey and that we all are on that journey.
It's a round, and it starts out very, very quietly and with one part, and then a second part is added, and then a third part, or more of a bass part, is added to fill it out.
You know, when you're singing in tune with people, there's some magic that happens. And people who are facing death and are getting closer and closer to death, there are magical opportunities that are presenting themselves there. So put the two together and it's really very powerful.
It's a chance to serve that family in an intimate way by bringing music, live music, you know, with real humans that care to be there. In my mind, the more emotion, the better.
It's absolutely an honor. It is the most intimate and mysterious and in some ways beautiful time to be with somebody when they are dying. In the beginning, we had a group of hospice volunteers that came who weren't necessarily trained singers, and we had attracted some trained singers who weren't hospice volunteers. So the trained singers had to learn about hospice philosophy, and the hospice volunteers had to learn a little bit more about singing.
So we'll start up here with the humming.
We also had to learn how to sing together, and most of us didn't know each other ahead of time. So there we are trying to do something that's very intimate, and we didn't know each other. And over these last 10 years, we've become like family to each other.
Sleep, my love, and he shall tend thee all through the night.
And then we started with a lot of simple songs, just 2 or 3 part songs, so they weren't the real complex, more complex things that we're singing now. That was part of the whole process, was just kind of gradually getting people singing more and singing together and tuning into each other.
I was working for the newspaper in Burlington, and there was an article about Noyana, and they interviewed Camilla, and they interviewed the group, and I just immediately hit me that that was something I wanted to do. I felt like you could go really deep very quickly, and music is a direct channel for that kind of communication. And I think that was another thing I'd always been looking for, as a way to just go right in and just forget all the the other things that get in the way.
And I think to myself, what a
we rehearse for 2 hours twice a month, and there are 8 of us that sing at Respite House every Saturday afternoon, a different mix of 8 every Saturday. So I try to attend as many of the rehearsals as I can, and to sing at least one Saturday afternoon a month at Respite House.
So Respite House is a hospice residence, and so we care for folks who are terminally ill. By hospice standards, when someone can come on to hospice is 6 months or less of their expected longevity. So Respite House serves individuals at the very, very end of their life.
And what's really special about the Noyana singers is not only their skills as singers, but they are also all hospice volunteers. They have been trained to support a client and a family at the end of life as part of an interdisciplinary team that includes clinical staff, social workers, a spiritual care team, and other volunteers. And that's part of what hospice and palliative care is supporting the person as a whole person.
I'm Patty Lanik. I'm 70 years old, and I'm living in the Respite House right now because I have serious cancer and a debilitating heart attack. So I will soon be dying. I am, of course, well, maybe not of course, but I am sad because I enjoy life and I don't know what's coming. I've also had time to be with the idea that I'm dying. So it's a little softened by the kind of time I've had to think about it, be with it. Also, my Buddhist practice has talked about it for years as the inevitable end of anyone's life.
You enter the room, and we have our books, and the facilitator will call, number 29, and the singers go to that. So the facilitator is the one that's sort of reading the family, reading the client, and choosing on the spot what we'll sing. We're going to start with a South African song.
Oh, good.
Okay? And the music director is really the, giving pitches, directing us. Keeping the group together and beginning, ending songs.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
Oh, I feel great gratitude for being offered this music and in such a close range.
Coming for to carry me home. Tell all my friends that I'm a-coming too. Coming for to carry me home.
And the whole idea that there's a group of people who have cared enough to practice and learn this music and then to offer it to people like me. So that's very loving, I think. And they're very good singers.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
Music is just, it's pure heart, I think. You drop all the thoughts and the sound is so emotional. So it's a lovely place to go to, I think.
Pure light within you, guide your way on.
I feel that the quality of music is extremely important. And the reason is, for me, if I imagine myself in a bed, dying, unable to get away, if I'm surrounded by out-of-tune singers, or people singing songs that aren't appropriate for me, it would feel like torture. And so we really had to work. We've worked for years and years on trying to hone the quality of our sound.
So let's do the tenor part on that. So 1, 2, 3. Infinite thy vast domain, everlasting is thy reign. So the only thing that's tricky is that D to F and vast. 4-part singing involves like 4 separate melodies, you could say, happening together. There are also chords that are created by those 4 parts. So I can hear the chords quite well. I remember an experience early in Noyana's life when we went into a room with a man who was by himself. The shades were drawn, it was quite dark. He was breathing very laboredly. He was pretty close to death, and he was having a hard time. He was unconscious. We gathered around the bed and we started singing to him, and we hit on one song that really seemed to help. And by the time we left, his breathing was slower and much quieter. So how does that happen? I don't know. That somehow the rhythm of the singing, I think, helped to calm his labored breathing. And I mean, I do believe that there's something in the harmonies that just is nurturing to people at that point.
We're singing for people of all different spiritual and religious orientations, and sometimes no religion at all. So, you know, we have to be very careful about what kind of songs we choose. We don't want to be singing Catholic songs for someone who's Jewish, and we don't want to be singing religious music for someone who is an atheist. So we have to be very, we try to get as much information ahead of time as we can so that the songs we choose are appropriate. And sometimes the songs can be very surprising. Like one time we sang for a family who seemed like they wanted religious music, they were asking for it, but when we noticed that they had a Red Sox blanket on the bed, so we sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
And everybody just lost it. That was the song that, you know, just touched this. It wasn't a sad kind of crying. It was, you could see how much this man meant to his family, and that was just like the perfect song to encapsulate this man's life. That was not, it wasn't a sad life. It was a beautiful life. It was a very rich life, and the music and the experience of them all singing with us was really powerful.
So Dad started off with prostate cancer that we found had gone into all of his bones, and that was a year ago. He's also been dealing with skin cancer for years, and he has congestive heart failure, and I think he's been very satisfied with being here. And it's peace of mind for me to know that my dad is well taken care of. I have both parents that are sick.
I'm not able to take care of myself. My balance can interfere with the normal things you do. I can fall and injure myself. I've done this a couple of times already, and so it's safer for me to be in the respite house, 24/7 care, you might say.
You know that I went in the
think for my father, he has a very strong faith that will help him. He deeply believes in God, in Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And I just know that that's there. He doesn't speak about it a lot, but he knows there's better things that are ahead.
All night, all day, angels watching over me.
Love it. There's a lot of beauty in it. It gives me a lot of pleasure to hear the voices of the different members of the choir. Music in general is a pleasure to me.
You know, this isn't a performance. When we sing, it is not a performance. It's a gift. If someone responds, like with tears or with a smile or just a look, then you know that it got into them. And so, you know, that's our kind of like our reward. But it's nice to know that the song that we sang is what they needed in the moment, and that it was pleasing.
You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
My father, it turns out, passed away 2 years ago, and I had been in the chorus for probably 5 or 6 years, but it was a formative, you know, it was kind of maybe subconsciously I was looking ahead to that, wanting to be sort of more prepared for end of life, at least as it related to my father. And his passing, through the training I got through hospice and just being around death and dying and families who were going through this, you know, for 5 or 6 years prior to that, I was much more sort of open to the richness of the whole process that happens when a family member is dying.
Recently, actually, when we were singing at the Respite House, our group was in a hallway outside a room, and I realized that several other family members from other clients were standing at the other end of the hall just to listen to us. And it just kind of occurred to me that you just don't get this in day-to-day life. A group of people singing in a lovely way just for you.
This is Tutankhamun. We also call him King Tut. It's pretty lonely here a lot of times, especially when I first got here and figured that it was like any day was my last day. You get depressed, really depressed. And then when they let me bring him in here, you can't be depressed around him. He's just always cuddling, always there. So I have terminal brain cancer, but right now I did chemo for 2 months, I think, twice a week. And they believe that during that time, so every time that they would do it, they would take a sample of my spinal fluid. And they believe they cleared it out. So I stopped doing chemo and I got much better. I think it was a combination between the cancer and the chemo. I was nearly dead a couple times.
But what are doctors telling you about your life expectancy now?
The best they've given me is the end of the year. The worst they've given me was 3 weeks when I first came to the hospice center.
Yeah. So, pardon me this difficult question, but what's that like? What's it like to be with that?
You don't make any plans for the future. Like somebody will say something, oh, something's happening, in July. I'll be going, cool. Maybe I'll be here, maybe I won't. Mm-hmm. I was telling one of the nurses the other day, a while ago, my electric toothbrush died. And I said, well, I shouldn't buy another one. What's the point of that? I finally broke down and bought one this week because I've decided that I'm healthy enough. I should have a toothbrush I like. Yeah.
Bind up this sorry world with heart and hand and mind. Heart and hand and mind.
I have never heard that before. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Just in general, when you're in a place like this, what does music bring?
I would have to say part of it. My husband was in the choir. Well, we were both in the choir at church, but he would sing a lot of solos. He was really very good. So sometimes one of the guys reminds me so much of my husband. So that's kind of bittersweet, but it still brings back fond memories of him.
Yeah, right. And it's emotional.
Very emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 years ago, I learned that my son had committed suicide. And well, you can imagine how devastating that was. He was 37. And I called our hospice leader, our Noyana leader, and told her and asked if they would sing for us at the rehearsal that night and that I wouldn't be there. And she said, would you like to be sung to? Would you like us to come over? And I said, oh, would you? And she said, yes, we'll be there. And they came that evening. And there were about 8 of them. And they stood right over there. And they said, what she said is there a particular song that you'd like to hear? And I said, I don't know. Just sing whatever, you know. And as they were going along, I realized there is a song that I'd like, but I didn't want to interrupt. And that was the next song they sang. How could anyone ever tell you you are anything less than beautiful?
How could anyone ever tell you you are anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you are less than whole?
It's like they've just reached in my head and picked out the song that I needed. And it was the first time in that whole horrible day that my spirits lifted and I felt like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to live.
Let's do 72, Over the Rainbow. You might know this one also.
What is it?
Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Oh yeah, I know that. Yep.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby.
The thing that has really impacted me about hospice care is that when you really allow someone to say the truth of what they're experiencing in that moment and in that time, you allow other people around them to feel it and to use that time well, you know, and when the pain is taken out of it, so you're not worried that someone's suffering, you really can let them die and watch them finish in the way they need to finish, whatever that means for them.
Once in a lullaby.
So when you have then the elements of Noyana coming in, then people are actually, as one of our hospice founders in Connecticut said, dying in good health. That you can actually die feeling slightly more healed than when you came into the process, because you've had the time to reflect, you've had the right supports to be held with honor and to recognize that you matter, as they say, to the very last moment of your life. And so in that way, people can die in a much gentler way with less struggle.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the
I realized that Noyana, being with Noyana and working to make Noyana happen has been the love of my life in a way. This is the work that I feel I was meant to do. And when we are singing, when I'm part of the group singing and I'm in a room in the presence of death and with the family around, and it feels like there could be nothing that's more real. And that's where I want to be. That's the experience that I want to be on that edge. And that's what makes life seem like it's worth living.
Why then, oh, why can't I? Oh, why can't I? Everything is changing, every single thing is constantly changing, every single thing is always changing, and yet with its steady light, the moon goes on glowing, 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 glowing. Everything is changing, every single thing is constantly changing, every single thing is always changing, and yet with its steady light, the moon goes on glowing, 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 glowing. Everything is changing, every single thing is constantly changing.